Well, anyway, welcome to our Taste of Chile Day, and we thank you all for being here, and I know that dishes are arriving downstairs, and we certainly appreciate everybody trying their hand at Chilean cooking. That's always fun. Although Karen says that we have some ingredients that would be considered total luxuries in Chile. So. Karen Anderson has been an ELCA missionary in Chile for 40 years. For 40 years, more than 40 years. Yes, and we have been supporting that ministry for many years, not 40, but many. Karen just happens to be the sister of the person who lives 2 doors down from me, and Christy, her sister. Christy's daughter and my son Brian were first girlfriend and boyfriend. So we have a strong connection with that family. Yes, it didn't last. And so we're very happy to have Karen here. In the display case, all of the Chilean things there are from Christy's home, and she said she has many, many more from you. So Karen was an ELCA missionary in Chile and began this program that we've been supporting, that she's going to tell us about today, and just retired as of last summer from ELCA missionaryizing. Do you like that word? Yeah. But she is still living down in Chile and working with EPES down in Chile. Her daughter and granddaughter, yeah, and husband live a block and a half away, and we're hoping they'll come for lunch. So you'll get to meet them down at lunch. Anyway, I'm going to turn this over to Karen. She knows about choir people. Oh, dear. And we also know that people drift in. So, yes. So, take it away.
I have a.
Oh, you have your own thing. Okay. And later, if we have questions, I can be the mic manager.
So is that on now?
Yes. Yes.
It is on?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, great. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
How Lutheran of you to sit all so far. I'm really tempted to make you move up, but I won't. So this summer when I went on my last home assignment visiting congregations like yours, I was here. When I was in Chile trying to write after 43 years, what do I have to say?
I'm sorry I misled you. It's not with
Oh, okay.
switch there.
Let's see. Now? Is it on? Now is it on?
Which switch? Oh, well, great.
Oh, there we go. Okay. How about now?
Is it on now?
Just.
Yes, now it's on.
Now it's on?
Yeah.
I can just shout.
Good voice.
So as I was saying, when I was preparing to come on my home assignment after 43 years, I remembered that saying that people go to visit a country for a week and write a book about it. Other people go for a month and write an article. And the people who stay a lifetime don't write anything because they know they don't know enough to write anything. That's exactly how I was feeling. Also, how do you sum up 43 years of ministry and work and all the changes in Chilean society in a few-minute presentation? So, and as I got to the States on February 1st, so I've been here for 22 days. And almost everywhere I go, I was just in California visiting my daughter, my other daughter, and other friends who lost everything in the fire. Everybody's always talking about Washington, what's happening, Trump, Elon Musk. And then they don't talk about it, let's talk, we can't talk about it. And then that's all everybody's talking about. So I did want to say, I think it's important to remember what's happening in Washington, the U.S. has done in many, many other countries, including Chile. So what was called the shock doctrine in 1973 with the military coup, which there's 16,000 pages of declassified documents in Washington, D.C. that show the role of the United States, of Kissinger and Nixon, overthrowing a democratically elected government to install a 17-year military dictatorship. And the very first thing they did, because when Allende, the president, was elected, Kissinger said, we can't let a communist, he wasn't a communist, he was a long-range member of the Socialist Party, very moderate party. He was a doctor, he had been in the Congress since the 50s, he had been the Minister of Health since 1937, but they couldn't let that happen in Latin America. Like all over Latin America, the US intervened. So deregulating banks, privatizing Social Security. We now have the worst Social Security. People retire. They said, you're going to retire with 100% of your income under the dictatorship. It's 20%. People are retiring with $200, $300. There's been massive protests about it, but we have a constitution written by the military dictatorship that every time there's a significant effort to make a change in something like education, like privatized healthcare, it bumps up against the Constitution that was written by the military. So it's a very frustrating reality. But that shock doctrine that's happening now is exactly what the U.S. is implementing in Chile, and which is why I went there. Because I was a college student when I first heard about the military coup in Chile. I went and worked with a Lutheran ministry in New York City. A young pastor and his wife had been in Chile at the time of the coup, and they were arrested and kicked out of the country. You may know the story of Missing, another U.S. citizen who was killed in Chile after the coup. So I went and worked with that ministry in New York City when I was in college. And I was so overwhelmed understanding the role of the U.S. in overthrowing a democratically elected government. And there were Chileans who had been tortured within an inch of their lives, living then in exile in New York City. And I went to see a film with them, and I just sobbed and sobbed. I thought, how, as a Christian, do I keep on living in this world with the reality that I know? And one of the Chileans who had just recently arrived, who had been tortured brutally and lost many members of his family, he hugged me and he said, Karen, nobody elects where they're born, and guilt doesn't get us anywhere. You have to learn to walk with the consciousness that you have every day. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last 44 years, walk with the consciousness that I have about the world and the things that we do. So I told my parents I'm going to go to Chile for 1 year, and that was in 44 years ago, actually, because I went in 1981. And I worked with the Lutheran Church in Chile, and I volunteered at a clinic of the Catholic Church. And I just fell in love with the women they were working with in urban shanty towns and squatter settlements. They were training them as community health workers. And I had really never heard of that before. I went to St. Olaf and have a nursing degree from there. But I had never heard of training community health workers. So I started studying it, and then I went to the small Lutheran church and said, what if we train community health workers in the daycare centers that we have throughout the poor neighborhoods? And they were like, yeah. I mean, it was a dictatorship. Under the dictatorship, Congress was closed. Even private organizations could not have elections. So they were very happy to see this 25-year-old young woman come with, hey, let's do this project, because many people had been kicked out of the country. Pastors had been arrested and tortured. So that new energy, they said, yes, let's do it. So I didn't have a clue what I was doing, actually, but I, with friends, wrote a project called EPES, Educación Popular en Salud, to train community health workers. That's the core of our mission, was training women in poor communities to be health promoters, and not as individuals. Our goal was never training 200 people how to take a blood pressure. It was training 15 to 20 people deeply committed in their community, helping them do a community assessment, decide what the issues were that they needed to learn about to be able to address issues in their community. And then we adapted always our training to the community assessments that the people did in their own communities. And that's been going on for 44 years now. 43 actually, we started in 41, but I mean, this is from last summer, so it was 42 and now we're on to 43. But this is a visit of, do you recognize who's in this picture?
Yeah.
So it was the bishop,
Yeah.
Bishop Eaton is there. So this is when they visited with Rafael Malpica, who's on the end, who was the head of Global Mission for many years, and Bishop Eaton this is when they visited in 2017, I believe it was. Let's see, is this going to go forward? So this is a blank page, I don't know why. So just EPES at a glance, again, we started in a time of Great Depression, so we were always under surveillance. There were always taxis sitting outside our office with polarized windows and big antennas. People on our staff have been arrested, and basically our goal was to promote health and healing and dignity in poor communities, and to support women, especially in a time when women are very marginalized. So we've also produced many, many materials over these years. We wrote a book about the work we do in the 90s. When it's 40 years, it's so much. So all kinds of and we became very well known for our educational games, because when we started training community health workers, we realized we didn't have the materials we needed that complied with popular education, which is starting with people's knowledge, not starting with our knowledge. So we had to develop a lot of educational games around the issues we were training on. So then this is just a summary of some of the projects that we're doing now today. So one is called Defending the Right to Health, and this is accompanying community health teams in Santiago and Concepcion. And a lot of the health promoters, we never expected that the health teams would last for so long. Some of them are over 35 years old. So as you may imagine, the participants have been aging as well. And so they designed this year a large campaign for healthy aging. They didn't want to call it aging. They said health, being creative and excited at every age. Memory and human rights. The health teams all live in very poor neighborhoods that during the dictatorship suffered enormously. You're having a luncheon today, and that is so coincidental with what churches did in Chile during the dictatorship, helping support soup kitchens so that people would have something to eat. When we started EPES, there was 80% unemployment in many communities. People really were going hungry. So the memory and human rights, and then the neighborhoods often were surrounded and house-by-house searches and people arrested and put in concentration camps. So every September, which the anniversary of the coup is September 11th, 1973, it's over 50 years now, there's a huge commemoration and recognition of what happened. But there's still a search for the people who disappeared. I don't know if have you heard of people, the whole idea of disappearing? Yeah. That started in Latin America. I mean, if you can't bury your loved one, it's very hard to have closure. So it's a very, very evil way of making people be just distraught and not have any way of knowing where their loved ones are. And there's still over 1,000 people who haven't been found. And many people whose cases were not tried. So the sense of that there's a lack of overall justice is huge. Bridging the gap, I mean, now there's so much technology. After COVID, we were enclosed for you could only go out 2 times a week for 2 hours, and you had to have a police authorization to go out during COVID, so we were very, very enclosed. And the younger people on our staff who are very good at technology helped the health promoters all get online with their phones. And then we did a little survey to find out who needed what, so we put money on people's phones so they could participate in workshops. And we just got everybody up to speed, so we had workshops around baking sourdough bread, workshops around family gardens, but it's meant that we are now continually doing training with the health promoters using technology, because they always talk about this gap, and it's huge, the gap of technology in the global south. Now let's see, where is it going? Did I just jump? Sorry. So all the projects have 2 aspects. One is a community action aspect, and another is trying to influence or having national impact around the issues that we're working on. So in terms of defending the right to health, here's some of the local and national impact that we've had. We have advisory coalitions working with primary healthcare workers. So we have now we call it a training center, and the primary healthcare workers and the hospitals and clinics hire us to train their workers, and we use the exact same methodologies that we use to train community health workers. So they have to divide into groups and look at pictures, analyze what's happening in a picture around a small child with diarrhea, look at what are the implications in the drawing. Sometimes there'll be a physician who will come to one of those trainings and will be sitting there like, oh, I'm so bored, I don't have anything to learn. And then the second day they go out into the community with a checklist and analyze what's happening with the community health team. The third day they have to make a work plan and carry it out in the community. Most of them, even if they work in a clinic in a community, they've never walked through the community. They're afraid of the community. So walking through the community and then doing an action plan with the community health team. And this same physician who had sat so bored the first day, on the last day was weeping, saying, I thought I was so bored the first day thinking, this is wasting my time. And now I realize if we are not connected to the social conditions in which people live and work, there's no way we can really address the health issues. So we have taken that training. That's a map of Chile, and those are all the places we've trained community health workers in the last 2 years. So it shows our tiny little team, I always say the little engine that could, training not only community health workers and staying very committed to those communities that we're working in, but also having a national impact by training community or public health workers in the far north of Chile, way down to the far south. Oopsie. Oh, I don't know.
Computer's making noise.
Oh.
Okay, try now.
Oh, there we go. So a second project that actually we've been working on for all 43 years is community prevention of gender-based violence. Sometimes I think we should stop every other thing that we're working on and only work on gender-based violence. It's so pervasive and so overwhelming. But we train and accompany community prevention teams about violence, have action fairs in public spaces and plazas, developing of flyers and resources for people. There you can see one of the legal orientations to denounce family violence. That's a whole guide and a training that we do with people. The National Ministry of Health invited us to develop a program to train community prevention of violence against women agents in all of Chile. So the last 2 years we've trained 50 women who work for the Ministry of Health in every region of Chile to address violence on a community basis and have the tools really to do that. So that in some ways is the biggest impact we've had, in terms of nationally, that they are using our design of how to do community prevention around violence against women. Do people know how many women were killed in Minnesota last year by their intimate partners? Anybody know? Got a guess? Or no? 40. No.
And so what would you say that would be in Chile?
Oh, last year, I think it was 50 actually. But Chile is bigger than Minnesota.
Sure, absolutely. I was thought it'd be way higher. Yeah, okay.
So then we have a project, Nutrition, Justice, and Health, and a part of this really took off during COVID because we could hire a taxi driver, had permission to go out during COVID, and we sent soil and seedlings to 50 community health workers, and then using online, training people how to start their individual family gardens, and now those have all turned into community gardens. And it's a very big project for us. Food sovereignty, helping people develop gardens that they can generate produce for their families that's sustainable. So here's some of the different images of people working in the gardens together. And we have done workshops on agroecology for people in the community. So we've graduated 80 people from that program, and on the bottom corner you can see the kids. We always offer daycare, and by professional daycare providers. When we've had students, the kids are just running around and they're uncontrollable. So we hire people to take care of them, and usually when whatever their mothers are studying or their fathers are studying, then that's the same thing they'll be studying, at a much more basic level. But the idea is that they have a chance to allow their parents to participate fully and at the same time feel a part of what's going on. So another project is a much more recent project, Right to Health and Migration. Because of Chile's geography, really didn't have that many immigrants before. Most people just came from Peru or Bolivia to work and went home. There wasn't these huge waves of immigrants. But over the last 10 years, it's just surged, and there was 50 Haitians in 2010, and now there's 200,000 Haitians. And it's a huge impact, and for them, they're the most vulnerable immigrants really, because most of them don't speak Spanish. They're black, and Chile is very racist and xenophobic, so they're very discriminated against. So we have started working with the immigrant community, the Haitian community, specifically women. And again, we didn't just go into their community and say, here's what we have to offer. First, we did a community assessment with the participation of both health workers and community workers, and for that we had to have Creole translators so that we could understand what people wanted. And what do you think the first thing the Haitian immigrant women wanted was? To learn Spanish. Oh. And I personally kept saying, that's not our mission. And the younger people on our staff said, but if they can't speak Spanish, they can't negotiate health care at the public clinic. And so, go ahead.
How the Haitians end up in Chile? It's the wrong side of the continent, and with the language barrier, what drew them there?
Well, they,
I mean, I get why they aren't going north to us, but I mean,
well, they are going on to.
Yeah.
They, well, they say it started after the 2010 earthquake. So, because remember, there's a huge
Right.
earthquake in Haiti and a huge earthquake in Chile. But the one in Chile was 8.8.
wow.
It shifted the world's axis, actually. But the Chile sent peacekeeping forces to Haiti after the Haitian earthquake, and they say that's how it started. The relationships between people and sort of, come to Chile. It's stable. There's a good economy. You can get jobs. So people started coming, and then sort of the opportunistas, the opportunists started then charging a fortune to have charter flights come, and people started arriving. Now they say a lot of people are leaving. It's hard to have an exact sense of the number. They're very frustrated and going north. And a friend of mine who's actually from Minnesota but lives now in Santa Fe is working with immigrants there, and she said a busload of immigrants came, and they said there was like 4 Chileans on the bus, and like, why were they Chilean? Well, they were Haitian kids who were born in Chile, listed as Chileans, and coming with their families. So she made it a great connection with us because we worked together. So. But those are all the women in the Spanish class, and the woman with the curly hair in the middle giving the graduation diploma to this woman is the current executive director of EPES. We also ran training for the primary healthcare workers around immigration because there was so much prejudice around. Oh, the Haitians, they don't take care of their babies. Oh, the Haitians, so they put salt in the coffee, that's why they have high blood, and so there's so many discriminatory things we had to, do training with them as well, and basically have them like do role plays, then they start laughing at themselves, realizing how much they're discriminating against people from another culture. So, somebody else had their hand up?
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, I was curious, is there any significant indigenous population in Chile?
Yeah, there
Is there discrimination?
Yeah, there is a very significant, the Mapuche population, which is in the 9th region in the south, is that's where they're also, of course, integrated into the rest of Chilean society. But there's a big battle going on about that land, who's the right owner of the land in southern Chile. So it's a very huge, it's an armed conflict that goes on constantly. Between landowners who came a century ago and basically took over the land from the Mapuches, and it's very tough. So, yeah. So then doing the Spanish classes and working with the women and the primary healthcare workers would be the community action part of that project, and then the local and national impact We participate in all kinds of the national network of migrant and pro-migrant organizations. We're on the advisory council of the National Migration Service in Chile, and we coordinate with the local migration office in the neighborhoods that we work in. And the ELCA, as you may know, has a very significant project called AMPRO, which is working with immigrants throughout the region, and it's connecting work in the States with work in the Global South. They're having their annual coordinating meeting right now in Colombia. So a couple of years ago, thousands of Venezuelans started coming in through the north of Chile, through Iquique, the far north, and there was so much discrimination against them. They were living in tents, and you see the fire down here? They did a march against them, and they burnt down their encampment. And so you saw pictures on the news of little kids standing with their stuffed animals watching the whole world burn down. So that really, we just felt, even though it's way in the north of Chile, it's like 1,000 kilometers in the north of Chile, that we did, because of the ELCA, AMPRO, we would have emergency funds that we could use to support them. So we traveled there and started working with them, and we really collaborate with an organization that's run by immigrants in the north. It's called AMPRO, the Assembly of Migrants and Pro-Migrants. It does sound better in Spanish, but on the northern border. So they've been providing humanitarian aid to people coming over the border, and had tickets so that they can reunite with their family in different parts of Chile, providing health care, especially for women, pregnant women who have come, and women have been raped in the road, or this long journey to Chile. So really providing workshops for them and support. And then down below you see workshops. This is after the first year we started providing workshops on trades. So kind of gender separated, I guess, or sex. The men were doing welding, and the women were doing food preparation. So Chile is also a country of disasters, and this is a list of the disasters. Many because of the effects of climate change, but also because of some of those very initial things of the shock doctrine that the U.S. was doing against Chile, in terms of the selling a lot of the land for planting trees to very wealthy people connected to the dictatorship, and they planted eucalyptus trees everywhere that are very flammable. And so one of the efforts is trying to plant native trees, kiai, that are not flammable in that place, but it's a very slow process. But we have responded to many of these emergencies. These are fires. 16,000 people lost their homes in Valparaiso, in Concepcion, and the Tongoy, or the earthquakes from 2010 and 2015. And I was just reading yesterday that the main person in Chile that everybody looks to about earthquakes said there's going to be another really big earthquake this year. It's going to be over 8 points again. So what these disasters always reveal is that they're not so much natural disasters, but rather socio-predictable, in the sense that behind that is inequity, substandard living conditions, and extreme poverty, the people that are always the most affected. So we have also worked with, I don't know if you've heard of ACT, Churches Acting Together. It's an organization that started from the World Council of the Churches, Lutheran World Federation, Lutheran World Relief, started another national or international organization to support natural disasters. And they do a lot of training. And we've coordinated that group in Chile, and now we're just one of the participants, but we have been coordinating it for many, many years. So these are clergy up on the right after the earthquake, and that's Lautaro with the hat on, the director of our team in southern Chile. The very first thing we did after the earthquake in Chile, after providing water for people, for over 1,000 people, and food for the very first days, and medical supplies, then people, when we asked them, again, gathering with people, what do you need? They said, we need a place to meet. We don't have any place to get together and have a cup of coffee and talk about what we need to do. So the very first thing we did is, you can't really see it very well, but we built that little house that's sitting behind the people that are sitting in a circle there. And then these are women who lost their homes during the earthquake. They perhaps the most vulnerable people that we worked with after the earthquake. They lived in a community called Gente de Mar, people of the sea. And these women collect seaweed and dry it and sell it to Japanese companies that use it for makeup, I guess. But they have to dry a lot of it to get 100 pesos. It's very, hardworking. So they, the ocean really was changed because of the earthquake, and they lost their homes. So we helped them rebuild. And then in a meeting, we said, what is it that you need? And the woman who's in the green vest, who was the leader, said, there's the ocean. It took everything from us. And there it is, waiting to give it back. All we need is boots and wheelbarrows, and we can go back to work. And so we gave them wheelbarrows and boots. We had a Mother's Day gathering and gave them wheelbarrows and boots. And as we were walking down with the wheelbarrows to the ocean, one of the women said to Lautaro, who again is the doctor who directed our staff there, why is EPES so worried about us? Why? We've been trying to figure it out all year. Like, why are you so concerned with us? Didn't you realize that we're nobodies? Oh. I have a hard time getting through that without getting very emotional. Yeah. And Lautaro, who has a very funny sense of humor, said, oh yeah, we know you're nobodies. We totally know you're the nobodies. You're the nobodies that defended your community. You're the nobodies that keep your kids going to school. You're the nobodies that are questioning even the municipality's response to this, and you're the nobodies going back to work to feed your families and continue forward. We know you're nobodies. But I think it's one of the things I've heard over and over through these 43 years is people saying, didn't you know we're nobodies? There's just this sense of being nobodies. And of course, as a church, as a community of faith, we're called to walk with those nobodies, whether they're in South Minneapolis or in Chile. I'm a very big crybaby, but so excuse me. So this was just last February in Valparaiso. Again, fires just broke out and wiped out many, many, many homes. And so we partnered with an organization that we have been training, really a group of young people in Valparaiso. We partnered with them to open a soup kitchen, providing 350 meals a day for people that lost their homes and helping rebuild homes and organizing activities for kids. In 2010, we started an international training program. People always asked us, why don't you train us to do the same, what you're doing, the interventions, using your materials. So we founded, with the support of the LCA, an international training program. At first it was 2 weeks long, now we've shortened it about 10 days. But we've had 265 people from 29 countries and 18 Lutheran churches come every January. We just finished it a month ago. Every January we have 20 people come, church workers, physicians, other health workers, social workers, students, health activists come, and they spend those days, 2 weeks or 10 days, as it may be, participating very hands-on. It's not sitting with the PowerPoint presenting, it's doing everything using popular education methodology. And again, they go into the community and work with the community health workers to do an activity, and it's always the thing that just changes their lives, to see strong local organizations and what it means when people have had a space to grow as community health workers, and the kind of leadership they can provide that we can't provide. They live in the communities, they know their problems better than we do, and we can accompany them in that walk. So these are just some of the pictures from the different groups. And from the international school, one of the biggest things that has grown out of it for us is the very first training. Grace Mose, African woman from Kenya, who wrote her PhD thesis in New York around trying to stop female genital mutilation, which I'm sure you've all heard of. And she got very interested in the idea of how you could use popular education to make changes in her country. So we gave her a scholarship to come to the very first training that we had, international training in 2010. And she went back to Kenya and founded an organization, the Hope Foundation for African Women, using the model that she had learned at EPES. And then 2 years later, she sent me a text and said, we really need to train our whole team. Our team needs to know these methodologies. So we brought, with the support of a generous donor, we brought her whole team to Chile and did a special training just for them in English. We only have 2 English speakers on our staff, so it was quite tricky. But very, very emotional, and you can look them up online. They do amazing work and continue working, and we've brought then Grace back every time, because the Lutheran Church has also asked us to provide the training for other partners in Africa. So we brought Grace every time to be a facilitator, because we realized she knows much more about Africa than we do, and we wanted to position the Hope Foundation as the representatives of our vision and training in Africa. So these are just some of the other countries that have where people have come from Africa specifically: Uganda, Ghana, Kenya, Madagascar, Senegal, Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. And there's people in Ethiopia running a workshop on popular education when they return. And I love this photo because this is a participant from the international school 2 years ago, Jose. And after that, he went to work on the border in Colchane, which is the border with Bolivia. And you see the women in hats, they're probably all Bolivians in there. And he sent us this picture and he just wrote, "Le quiero tanto, I love you guys so much. I finally have tools to work in the community." So that's one of our games. That's a participatory community assessment game. And he put it there and he enlarged it and put it on the wall. He adapted it. It's a board game where you go around the board and there's questions about housing, about healthcare, about work, about the history of the neighborhood. So people go around and it's really to get people to think outside the box in terms of not just saying what are the health problems, but what are the conditions in which people work, who picks up the garbage, how many women are working, how many people are unemployed. So the people go around and ask those questions, and then at the end of that, there's an analysis about what do you think are some of the major problems in the neighborhood. So I love this picture because he was so excited about using the materials that he had learned in the international school. So now there we go. Whoopsie. Sorry. So I think some of the pillars of sustainability of our work are that we have led EPES through all these years as a collective. So I was the founder and first director, but I realized very early on, what's a gringa going to be doing leading a program in Chile? And it made much more sense to lead collectively. So the 4 of us in the orange t-shirts there are the original team, Maria Eugenia, standing by me. The person sitting below her is Christina Nils, who's a Canadian physician who was a part of the first team, and Rosario Castillo, who took over the leadership as the executive director after me, but again in a collective. And the 3 women at the top are the executive team now that's really taking over as the old ones, the seniors, as they keep calling us, retire and move on or take positions to be supportive but not on the front lines. And that's our whole team there, below there. Another pillar of sustainability.
When you say, can you go back? When you say that's your whole team,
There.
are you saying those are, I'm sorry. I didn't do it.
No,
It wasn't-
I don't know.
Oh, it's circling. I think
Are
it's
you
lost- lost
saying
connection.
those are
Okay.
all the employees you have?
Yeah, we have 18 employees, but we went through a transition this year. After our 40th anniversary, we're almost done, but.
Oh, okay.
But you can try.
I'll keep poking around, I'm not sure what.
Yeah, so after our 40th anniversary, we had a huge celebration. We had a big delegation from here, from the ELCA. And basically the day it was over, I said, we have to start reimagining EPES. I kept calling it downsizing, and then we had a great consultant who said, don't call it downsizing, call it reimagining. So we reimagined and downsized EPES. So we just closed one of our centers. We just couldn't continue having 18 staff people in 2 big centers, one in southern Chile. So it was very heartbreaking for us, but we've survived 43 years by strategic thinking and being realistic about reality and making the decisions. So we closed our center because we really have the strength of the organization is in Santiago, and we'll move forward under the leadership of these great women. But yeah, we've had a staff of 18. And people always ask us, how did you all that work?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
A lot of it's leading coalitions and being a part of working with others, that we can't change anything without really influencing and participating with others. But we have a very dedicated staff. We have an amazingly dedicated staff.
I think you're gonna get around of juice.
Oh.
That's what happened.
Oh, okay.
So,
Should I play it?
oh, sure. There, I didn't want to dig in your stuff, so you can keep talking, I'll keep working.
So do people have other questions or comments, or I'd love to hear from you.
I had a question. I mean, you started talking about that game, but I'm curious about the community assessment process and how that, maybe what you've learned doing that over the years and what that looks like now.
I think there are usually, it really depends on where we are and what group. So when we started the Nutrition, Justice, and Gender program, we, in the community, well, the district, Chile isn't divided into districts, and we work in El Bosque, which has 185,000 people. That's where our office is. And so when we started the Nutrition, Justice, and Gender, we invited like 30 organizations from the neighborhood, including local organizations, women's organizations, youth groups, but also the municipality. Because unlike during the dictatorship when we couldn't work with the government or the municipal governments in any way, we were considered subversive. You couldn't work with them. Now we can, and now there's a lot of people that we can influence, and so we then really did a participatory assessment that included publishing a document about what are the issues around nutrition in the community. And that's more sophisticated than others. Other times we play a game. We have people, they're coming for a workshop that's not that, it's not going to last that long, or it's on one specific topic, but we still start with some sort of diagnóstico, an assessment saying, what is it that you need to learn to be able to influence your community? And using like games like that or other methodologies. You can do a problem tree. You come to our international school and learn all this.
Yes, I should.
So, are there other questions?
How have you, I'll say, kept your spirits up or at least intact in such a challenging environment?
Well, I think because of all these people, and the health promoters are just amazing. They're women that they're on the front lines. To see how their lives have changed is very inspiring. Many of them went back to school and finished high school. Several have finished college. I think when I was here in the summer, one of the daughters of one of the health promoters from the very first health team passed the bar exam. Oh. And she came into the office. Woo! My daughter's a lawyer. She's the first person in our huge family to go to college. And they usually they stay in their communities, serving their communities. If not the exact community where they grew up, another poor neighborhood. So I think their spirit, then my faith, and I grew up in a very positive family, and sort of talk the talk, walk the walk type family. So, but I also think hope is really important, and I always think hope is born in action. If we're all sitting around like, oh, this is terrible, this is so terrible, then somebody says, let's go do an action, let's go paint a mural about, whatever, HIV, about the garbage, and, suddenly somebody turns on music and we're painting a mural and people start coming by, and then a dog comes by and everybody, it's just, there's a sense of hope, there's a sense that we can change things, and it's not naive, it's not a sense, we know the problems are overwhelming, but if we don't do anything, nothing will change. So, but Chileans have a great sense of humor, and we have just such wonderful people on our staff that I feel inspired by them every day. And I have a lot of energy. My mother's 104, and still independent. And lives in Roseville, in a Presbyterian home. And if you talk to her on the phone, she'll, my daughter, this is just a sidebar, but my daughter was talking to her and said, oh, we visited our friends in LA that lost their home and now they live in an apartment. And my mother immediately said, I thought they were living in a house. I mean, she's just like totally with it. So. But she has a lot of energy.
So the community health workers are volunteers?
Yeah.
And, okay, that's one question. And
But can I just say something about that? They're not volunteers for us. Our whole vision
No.
was training organizations, really spinning off organizations. So the idea that, again, not training 200 people to take a blood pressure, but training small groups of people that then continue working. So they're their own teams. The first year of the training is about all the topics that they've selected in their diagnosis, their assessment. But the second year is about organizational consolidation. And that's what we teach in our international training, and I think it's the thing that really differentiates our work from others, is the long-term vision. That we're trying to build organizations that can do a work plan, that can sell soap ideas to help fund their work plan, that are independent, that we accompany, and we certainly provide some of the materials, but always in collaboration in a sense of producing independent organizations. So they're volunteers in that sense, but they're really active members of an organization that they form.
did you come down, okay, the whole idea of community education, you brought that down to Chile, you found it down there, you were trained up here in,
Did you guys read the book Pedagogy of the Press by Paulo Freire? Like, I read it at St. Olaf when I was there in the 70s. So he's really so I definitely didn't bring it, but I introduced it in our small staff, and then we had to try to, Paulo Freire, this is just a snapshot, was a Brazilian he was a Brazilian lawyer actually, but he grew up in a very poor family, and he started doing literacy training with peasants. And then he realized that most of the adult literacy training was very much like run, spot, run in Portuguese, but it was very infantile. It treated adult learners as if they were children, which he really didn't like. So these are adult learners. These peasants can run irrigation systems that people with PhDs can't. Why are we treating them like this? So he really developed, and it's all in that book, Pedagogy of the Press, a different kind of pedagogy, which starts where there's all kinds of principles. And again, this is what we teach in our international school. There's principles. Education isn't neutral. You're either on the side of the poor, or you're domesticating them to accept the situation they're in. We're co-learners. What they have to offer. I have certain knowledge that I hope I can offer, but they have more knowledge about their lives and the communities they work in. People learn with their hearts, their brains, and their bodies, so a lot of learning is very artistic. We do, develop songs about, respiratory infection, and then dance with it. Develop so you're using things that aren't intimidating to people. So there's a lot of those principles that people learn better when they're in groups, when there's an action accompanied. So those are all the things that we accompanied, but we didn't know how to apply it to health. So we spent a long time in the very beginning of EPES developing this model and developing the materials that we still use. The ones that we developed in 1982, a lot of them we're still using, and we have developed many more over the years. But so Paulo Freire actually was exiled in Chile. And that's where he wrote Pedagogy of the Press, and then he was exiled from there. He ended up at the World Council of Churches. If you go into any library, he's one of the more seminal thinkers of Latin America. Many, many books by him, about him, in conjunction with other people. And it's a very exciting pedagogy. And one of the things is, it's not just dancing the cha-la-la, it's trying to change and build a more just society. And I think that the outcome is clear. It's not just education for education. We are trying to build a more just society. And that's kind of differentiates it from just like dancing the cha-la-la. Because a lot of non-formal education for adults doesn't really question the situation they're in or invite them to question it. But popular education definitely does. So, any other questions?
what is the cha-la-la?
I don't think you guys will do it. Would you do it with me? I have to go, how do you dance the como se baila la cha-la-la, se baila así, cha-la-la, se baila así. And then I go, como se baila la cha, this would be in a circle. Como se baila la cha-la-la, then you have to lead us in something. Como se baila la cha-la-la, se baila así, la cha-la-la, se baila así. Como se baila la cha-la-la. Let's see. Come on, you guys. So I say I have a PhD in cha-la-la, because a lot of times don't want to leave it, and they go, Karen? I have to say with the African women, it was just a total kick.
Oh,
We have like a language barrier, and then I said, oh, I think you can learn Spanish. And we can dance the cha-la-la together. So any other questions or comments, or I guess
I guess I have another question. So with all the stuff going on with USAID, is that affecting anything there, or with EPES, or?
You know, I don't really know how it's going to affect
Okay.
things in the long run. I think because, as you know, the Lutheran Church has been attacked pretty brutally, Lutheran Social Services. We don't receive direct funding from Lutheran Social Services, but we do receive World Hunger Funds, and we have the projects that I was showing are projects funded by the ELCA in part, not totally, but in part. So we're not sure.
Okay.
But you know, we lived 17 years of a military dictatorship and lived with 3 exceptions to the Constitution. We lived in a state of siege, a state of emergency, and a state of perturbación de la patria, which the fatherland is upset. I don't know how else to translate it. So we, you know, people don't think of life in a linear path of things are going to get better. It's been so disrupted, their lives and their history. So people legally asking, why aren't the gringos in the streets, man? That's what people are asking. Where's the resistance? Where's the fighting back? But we don't know how it'll affect us, but I'm sure it will. I think it will.
And so are you suggesting that, when they say, well, why aren't we doing anything, sort of, that's how change happened in Chile, was
Yeah.
the demonstrations and the...
Well, I think it was both in the sense that, well, we started EPES in 1982, so the dictatorship started in 73. The most brutal part of the, you know, just the massive arrests of 40,000 people and torture was in the first decade, but there were still people disappearing and being arrested and tortured more specifically. The bishop of the Lutheran Church in Chile was arrested and kicked out of Chile, and it was because he started the Committee for Peace. He was the first voice to raise up against the dictatorship with other people in the Catholic Church, the Jewish community, and the Methodist Church. And he risked his life doing that. He personally drove people at night and helped them get into embassies, because I don't know, do you know this? This is where how people, they're being chased, or people are being arrested just without any means. They didn't have any chance to do any, you know, defense or habeas corpus, anything. So he was helping people get out of the country, and he founded the Committee for Peace, and then he was kicked out of the country. Other pastors were arrested and tortured, and I said, that's the kind of church I want to be a part of. You know, and I think today the church has to stand up. It has to stand up in this country, and we have to accompany the people who are the most vulnerable. Because, you know, one of the quotes they said over and over during the dictatorship was, I never know, I think it was a Lutheran pastor in Germany, right, who said, first they came for the communists, I wasn't a communist, so I didn't do anything. Then they came for the trade unions, I wasn't a unionist, so I didn't. Then they came for the teachers, then they came for me, and there was nobody left. So I think that today, at least my feeling in the U.S., we need to accompany, and I think did you point out that there's an activity today?
Cynthia.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that is, to me, that's the church has to be there and be a part of the raising the voices, especially for the people who are the trans community, the immigrant community, who are less. But hey, it can be a lot of people in the end, you know, who are considered enemies of the state. I mean, in Chile, people turned in their neighbors, some out of fear, some out of, you know, they had a grudge against them for something, and it was just, you know, terrible. And the whole thing was just terrible. Thousands and thousands of people tortured, and there's still a percentage of the population that supports Pinochet, who thinks, you know, oh, we need a strong man, because now there's more violence, that they blame on immigrants, and so, oh, Pinochet should come back. I mean, he's dead, but somebody like him, you know, strong man, dictator.
Do you feel good about where the Chilean government is now? Good man.
Comparatively, yes. Yes, I don't know, do you know that we got this very young president who was elected? He was a student leader and he was elected. He's been very criticized. It's very hard to do. The right wing in Chile is so powerful because of the dictatorship, and under the dictatorship consolidated so much power and so much economic power. The 1% in Chile owns 50% of the pie.
Still.
Yeah, and so it's very hard for more progressive forces to do anything. But he has done some very positive things. Of course, he's very criticized, but it's just kind of the nature of it. But I think it's still a democracy. He was elected, and the elections now will be this November for president. Any other questions? I was just wondering, I can't remember what's on the end of this. Oh, now it won't go again. Oh, there we go. So yeah, this is accompaniment. Is that a word that everybody knows?
Yes.
That's the model of mission of the ELCA. You know, we're not the missionary saviors. We're the people going to pitch our tents with people in their communities, walk with them, share in their struggles, and be a part of that in accompaniment. And as we accompany others, you accompany us. So our staff knows all about the congregations when I visit, and in 2 of the congregations this summer, one of the staff people, they were the last 2, which was my home congregation in Owatonna, and then another congregation in New York that's been very, very close to us, came to be a part of that. And they know the congregations are praying for them, that are supporting us, and that's just very empowering, and knowing that we're part of a Christian community that cares about. I would say, yes, we need money, but we need friends. We need people who care about us, and you will jot us a note saying, oh, I read your report, it was interesting. And anyway, accompaniment is a great model for mission. Oh, I'm going backwards there. These are just, again, photos of. So thank you all for your support over all these years, especially Judy, who's just been such a great supporter and friend of EPES. And any other questions or thoughts? Or
Just because you explained this this summer, you've retired as an ELCA missionary, but the ELCA hasn't stopped its support of EPES.
Right, yeah. And I sent a letter to the mission committee with ways to continue supporting EPES directly, which would be great, which would be wonderful.
Right.
Yeah,
And
and these
And
projects
we-
are,
Yeah, we have planned, we put that in this
Yeah.
coming budget.
oh, that's great,
Yeah.
thank you.
So,
Thank you. So, oh, I just lost my train of thought. I was going to say something about accompaniment.
Yeah, just so you know, we used to support Karen through the missionary thing at
ELCA.
ELCA, and EPES through the Action for Health in America, which is the American arm,
Yeah.
as it were. And so now what we're doing is we're sending all of our money to AHA,
Yeah.
Action for Health in America, so it gets directly to EPES without all the ELCA paperwork, which is pretty overwhelming. So if you have any questions about that, what we've done with our budget, I mean, I know we explained it at budget time, but you can always keep explaining it. But so if you have any questions about what we're doing with our budget, that's what we're doing.
And I want to thank Karen for, not only for being here today, but for all of your years of work with EPES. It's just been, it's such a wonderful organization, and you've been a huge part of that.